Long before the Bible was finalized, long before Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, the people of the ancient Near East worshipped many gods. These were not small tribal spirits. They were grand deities, storm gods, fertility gods, creator gods, each with their own myths, temples, and priests. And in the midst of this divine world, Yahweh was not supreme. Yahweh began as a relatively obscure figure, a desert storm god, associated with the rugged lands of Edom, Midian, and the southern wilderness. He was fierce, fiery, a god of battle and thunder, but he was not the highest, nor the only God. He was just one among many. The Bible itself, when read closely, preserves hints of this forgotten reality. In passages scattered through Deuteronomy, Psalms, and the prophets, we see traces of a time when the Israelites recognized other gods, but chose Yahweh as their own. This is not the story most of us grew up with, but it is the story the ancient evidence reveals. So how did Yahweh go from being one God among many to becoming the one true God? How did a tribal storm deity rise to sit alone on the throne of heaven? The answer lies in a tale of rivalry, absorption, and erasure. A tale of how Yahweh swallowed the powers of other gods until only his name remained. And it all begins with El, the great high god of Canaan. In the ancient Canaanite pantheon, El reigned supreme. He was the father of gods, the ancient of days, the king enthroned at the cosmic mountain. Ugaritic texts discovered at Rosh Shamra describe him as a bearded elder, wise and eternal, presiding over the divine council. This council was made up of the sons of El, a host of deities who ruled over the nations. Among them were Baal, the storm god, Anat, the warrior, Asherah, the mother goddess, and Yahweh, a fiery but relatively minor deity tied to the deserts of the south. For the Israelites, El was not a distant figure. He was central. Even the very name Israel means El rules, not Yahweh rules. The patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, are repeatedly described as worshiping El under names like El Elyon, God Most High, and El Shaddai, God Almighty. This distinction is even admitted within the Bible itself. In Exodus 6:3, Yahweh declares, "I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but by my name Yahweh, I was not known to them." This is astonishing. The text acknowledges that the patriarchs knew El, not Yahweh. But over time, something began to shift. Yahweh and El slowly merged. Titles once belonging to El were transferred to Yahweh. El Elyon became Yahweh Most High. El Shaddai became Yahweh Almighty. Even more telling is Deuteronomy 32:8 in its oldest form. It says, "When the Most High divided the nations, he fixed their boundaries according to the number of the sons of God." But Yahweh's portion was his people, Jacob, his allotted heritage. This means El, the Most High, divided the nations among the gods, and Yahweh was assigned Israel. Yahweh was not the supreme God. He was one among many. But later scribes altered the text, replacing sons of God with sons of Israel to hide this uncomfortable truth. Through careful blending and editing, Yahweh eventually absorbed El's identity. The tribal God of the wilderness was now the eternal Father, the Ancient of Days, the universal Most High. But Yahweh's rise did not stop there. To become supreme, he had to defeat another rival, one far closer to his own stormy domain. That rival was Baal. If El was the high god Yahweh absorbed, then Baal was the rival he had to overthrow. Baal was no minor deity. Across Canaan, he was worshipped as the rider on the clouds, the god of storm and rain, the bringer of fertility and life. Farmers depended on him. Kings praised him. Myths celebrated his triumphs, especially his victory over the chaotic sea. But here lies the problem. Yahweh was also a storm god. His identity overlapped with Baal's. And so, as Yahweh rose in prominence, he began to take over Baal's imagery, Baal's titles, and even Baal's myths. Psalm 29 is perhaps the clearest example. The psalm describes a divine voice thundering over waters, breaking mighty cedars, shaking the wilderness, and flashing forth fire. This entire poem is nearly identical to earlier hymns dedicated to Baal. The only difference is the name. Where once Baal thundered, now it is Yahweh. The same is true of the sea myth. In Ugaritic texts, Baal defeats Yam, the sea, and establishes cosmic order. In the Hebrew Bible, it is Yahweh who rebukes the waters, who stills the seas, who crushes the serpent of chaos. The story remains, but the name has changed. And in the narrative of Elijah on Mount Carmel, the rivalry becomes explicit. 450 prophets of Baal call on their God to send fire, but nothing happens. Elijah calls on Yahweh once, and fire falls from heaven. The people cry out, Yahweh, He is God, and the prophets of Baal are slaughtered. This was more than a miracle story. It was propaganda, a public humiliation of Baal, a rewriting of religious loyalty. But the irony is clear. Even as Baal was cast down, Yahweh took over Baal's thunder. Yahweh became the true rider on the clouds. Having absorbed El and defeated Baal, Yahweh's supremacy was nearly complete, but one more figure remained. Not a rival, but a partner, a goddess. Her name was Asherah. Asherah was one of the most prominent goddesses of the ancient Near East. She was the lady of the sea, the queen of heaven, the giver of fertility and life. In Ugaritic tradition, she was the consort of El and the mother of the gods. But as Yahweh absorbed El's identity, Asherah's story took a surprising turn. Archaeological discoveries in Israel, inscriptions at Kuntilat Adrud and Kirbet El-Kom, reveal that many Israelites worshipped Yahweh alongside Asherah. One inscription even reads, "Blessed be Uriyahu by Yahweh and by his Asherah." Clay figurines of a goddess, often found in Israelite households, suggest that Asherah was a part of daily worship. For many, Yahweh was not alone. He had a partner. But as Israelite religion moved towards exclusivity, towards the cry of Yahweh alone, Asherah became a problem. Her shrines were torn down, her sacred trees destroyed, her worship condemned as idolatry.